Jermaine Cole, Young Simba, Mr. Nice Watch, The Born Sinner, The Therapist, Hollywood Cole, Vietnam's finest, Kill Edward himself, just dropped a brand new album called The Off Season. It is officially 9:01 p.m. and I'm about to listen to this highly anticipated project, reacting to every song right after I hear it for the first time ever. And if you don't know me, my name's Max with Hip Hop Unwrapped. I'm a longtime Cole fan going way back to his first mixtapes. And if you heard any of the buzz around the offseason, you know that this is supposed to be a return to form. Cole has promised us that he's bringing back the hunger, the bars, the storytelling, all the things that made him one of the fastest rising stars in the rap game over 15 years ago. And now it's time to find out whether Cole was able to tap into that raw hunger and energy that defined his early work. And if that LA Leakers freestyle he put out this week is any indication, us Cole fans are in for something very, very special. And if you're obsessed with music like me and you stay up late to listen to new albums as soon as they come out every Thursday night, you've probably already heard it by the time you watch this video. So let me know what you thought of the album and if it met your expectations in the comments. But what I really want to know is, do you think this is Cole's defining classic album? Is this his best work? I'll be giving my take on that at the very end once I hear it all, but what I want you to do right now is take 3 seconds to hit that like and subscribe so that I can hit that play button and finally listen to this album. And if you did that, thank you so much. Original hip hop content will be on its way to you every month. So here we go. Let's listen to the off season. The Killer Cam intro? Not the Killer Cam intro. Put an M right on your head, you Luigi brother now? That's bars. So many shells left on the ground, I make the Easter Bunny proud. Woo! Krispy Kreme dreams, sometimes my dogs want to kill 12. Hey fucking yo. Hey fucking cab. Bruh. Cole, man. Alright, that was fucking wild. Starts off with the Cameron intro, just classic, legendary. I'm pretty sure I heard Little John screaming at the end of that with his yeah. Wow, Cole hit so many different pockets, so many different little flows here. There was bars that just, those one-liners just hit different. They stood out. The Easter Bunny Shells bar, the one about Kid Cudi's hums, the one about the donuts and the cops killing 12. Woo! This shit is lethal. Pen to paper lethal, just like he says. What was that first bar about the Mario, the Luigi? Put that M up on your head, you Luigi brother now? Come on. Cole is fucking back. Cole World, no fucking blanket. Fuck a blanket. God damn. I feel like I need to stand up for this or something. Alright, time to dive into track 2. Here we go. Loving what I'm hearing so far. Okay, this beat's a little slower, a little chiller. Oof. Woo! Hold up. That emotion in his voice in Amari. Oh my. You just hear that rawness, like his voice almost cracked right there. Oh, auto-tune Cole. Sounds so good. That little flute sample. Ooh, you could hear Future on this. Alright, track 3, My Life. Here we go. Alright, we got a nice little soul sample. Building up. Got Cole talking in the background. Bruh. Had to pause. Know it's on site when I see you, like I'm working at Squarespace. On site, Squarespace, Square. Bruh. This... Like, that took a second to process, and then it just, like... Cole's on top of his fucking game right now. He's at the tippy top. Like, who's fucking with that? Who has written a bar that good? Who has written a bar that good in the last 3 years? What, like, I can't name one rapper. 21 feature? Okay. I don't know who this is singing on My Life, the song featuring 21, but not really feeling the vocals. 21's verse was was pretty savage. I mean, some pretty heartless bars on there. I mean, he's living up to his name. This is probably my least favorite track so far, but let's keep going. Oh yeah, applying pressure. All right, diving into applying pressure. This beat is nuts. It's laser beams, fucking Star Wars type sounds. Bruh. Instead of capping, why don't you rap about what it's like to be a broke rapper? Hold up. I gotta rewind that. Hold up. I got more M's than the real Slim Shady video. That was fire. Let's get into Punching the Clock now. 'Cause this is great so far. Punching the Clock. I mean, this is probably my favorite song so far. First of all, this like silky smooth beat, and Cole is just like, he's just winding in between like the flow, just hitting back and forth like as the beat like just oozes through his words. I mean, it's just such a mastery of the art of rapping right here. He's just really completely, commanding this beat, telling this really painful story about a little boy who, or possibly about himself as a kid when he was playing with a gun and almost shot someone by accident and then had to basically just come home and act like nothing happened. And then we have this outro. I don't know who it is, but I'm guessing it's somebody who's in the NBA who's talking about how during the off season, if you don't prepare in the off season, you're going to be trash in the actual season when everyone else has been preparing and when you should be at the top of your game. And that kind of goes back to the title of this, right? The off season. You might think like, or at least when he first announced it, I was like, oh, okay, he's going to take some time off, like just like more of like some chill, like mixtape type stuff where he's doing like, a lot of features and he's just like kind of messing around, remixing other songs, maybe like getting on really, just getting on some famous instrumentals. But no, like for Cole, the off season is like in basketball where you have to train, you have to prepare. And if you don't, you're going to be trash. And the off season is really like this point where if you're LeBron or if you're a famous athlete like Cole is a famous rapper, you could just relax, you could just chill, and you could get comfortable. But one thing that Cole's been talking about a lot in his interviews and in the documentary that he just released is that he came to that moment after the Forest Hills Drive tour and after he was super successful with that album where he could actually have just retired, or he could actually just start slacking and he could start getting comfortable. And he says, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fight comfort. I'm not going to let myself get comfortable. I'm going to work hard every single day like I'm training for the next thing that I'm going to do, like I'm training for the next season of my career. And that's exactly what he did. That's why when he announced the off season, he said this is a masterclass in preparation, because that's really what it is. He's been preparing for this, grinding, working on his craft, mastering his craft this entire time when, a lot of other rappers, when they reach this stage in their career, like Cole comments on, just kind of fizzle out and they let their craft die. They get complacent, but Cole is not allowing himself to do that. And I think that this song really touches on that theme. That's kind of like the big idea behind this album in the off season, is not that he's taking time off and letting himself slack. It's actually the opposite, that he's doing what other people don't do, where they might relax. Cole's going twice as hard, and you could really hear it in this album. And I think that little outro, like I said, I don't know who it is, but I'm guessing it's an NBA player. That little outro just shows that this really is one of the main themes. And the song title, it's called Punching the Clock. Punching the Clock. He's punching that clock during the off season. He's working every day. He's getting up and grinding. He's working nonstop. He's taking care of his family. He's also playing basketball. So yeah, this was my favorite so far. And that beat is just so, it's an earworm. Like I could hear it right now. I want to hear it again. But we're gonna move on to the next song, which is called 100 Mil. All right, so right off the bat, this song continues this theme. It's called 100 Mil, and he says right away, 100 mil and I'm still on the grind. Cole is probably at this point worth around 100 million. I think his net worth was like 60 in 2018, coming off of the KOD tour was 27 million, I think, and the For Your Eyes Only World Tour was 36 million or so. So he was worth 60. So 2 years later, makes sense. And yeah, this song is all about how he made $100 million, but he's still grinding. And actually, as the beat drops, you hear like a whistle. You hear a sports whistle, like he's getting in the game. So I'm really excited for where this album's going to go from here, because it feels like the theme is just now starting to come together. And he's kind of telling that off-season story through the album now, where I wasn't really hearing that as much in the first couple songs. So let's keep going. Gotta pause again. Just because, right here, Cole is basically talking down to his peers, saying, like, what are you doing with your time? Like, I don't know what you guys do with your time, but here's what I do with mine. Here's the grind that I've been putting in. And he's kind of like, do you even know what you do with your time? Or you guys just waste it? And that's kind of been something that's been repeated through the album. And I think that's really interesting, because he's always had this kind of, like, streak where he's giving advice, but kind of also saying, like, not in like a condescending way, but more in a way like, are you living right? Where he's trying to nudge people to come to the conclusion that there is a better way to live, or even just trying to get people to just reflect on how they live their lives. And so in his earlier mixtapes, which I listened to all week, and are some of my favorite projects of all time, you hear that a lot, where he's kind of criticizing but also empathizing with the lives that a lot of people live in his neighborhood, and pretty much saying, like, why don't you do something worthwhile? Why don't you master a craft? Why don't you pursue something instead of chasing women or getting drunk and high all the time or just wasting time? And he also talks about like different violence and police brutality, and he talks about race issues in general, but it's always like from this kind of critical perspective. He even calls himself on Dollar in a Dream, he calls himself the Fayetteville Observer. And that's really what he's doing. He's observing what's going on around him and kind of giving this critique of it. It never feels like he's saying he's above it himself, but he's also kind of just saying, like, can we talk about this? Can we do better? Where can we elevate ourselves as people? And I feel like back then, it was really focused around his environment, right? It was really focused on the gang activity he saw. It was really focused around his peers who were just kind of like going to waste, I guess. He saw that their potential, their lives were not going to progress past their home city. And that's something that he even says in this song. Most people haven't even heard of my city until they pop my CD in. And a lot of people who he grew up with didn't go to college. They never even, like he says on the other song, that he never had a passport. They never grew outside of their community. And Cole, from the beginning, was kind of telling people, like, do you have bigger plans? Because you probably should. And here, he's kind of, instead of talking to his peers then, he's talking to his peers now and talking to pretty much the rest of the rap game, saying, like, what are you guys doing? Because it seems like a lot of rappers get complacent, they fall off, and, Cole is not accepting that for himself. And so he's holding himself to that standard, and he's also holding the rest of the game to that standard. All right, so he just said that he's proud of his people because they never switched up, and that he doesn't care if it's Michael B. Jordan that's calling his woman. She's never going to fuck. Honestly, I think that's a little too much confidence from Cole. Michael B. Jordan, I mean, come on. Like, you get a pass for that. Like, come on. Come on, fellas. You got to give your lady a pass for Michael B. Jordan. I mean, all right, yeah, so these last couple songs have really been much more interesting to me, like a lot more to talk about. So Cole says, how come I still haven't entered my prime? Still getting better each time. And I think that's really interesting, because you always hear this debate, like, is this, people always discredit Cole because they say that he doesn't have that one amazing classic album. He doesn't have that To Pimp a Butterfly, right? And that's always something that, it's always felt like Cole has never reached his full potential. Like Born Sinner, great album. Forest Hills Drive too, like great album, but were they classics? Were they albums that really just like defined a generation of hip hop? I feel like they really weren't. Or were they some kind of momentous achievement? They were really good. They're some of my favorite albums, but I don't know if they were on the level of To Pimp a Butterfly, where like we are going to be that's going to be talked about in 50, 100 years. That's going to be the face of what hip hop could ever achieve right there. has Cole done that? And I feel like the answer is no. And so that's interesting that he says that. So he says, how come I still haven't entered my prime? I'm getting better each time. And then he says that his competition are just wasting time. That's pretty much all they're good at. So that goes back to kind of like his approach, the standard he holds himself to with his grind, mastering his craft, and just kind of looking around and seeing that other people aren't holding themselves to that same standard, and their quality is, it shows in their quality. During their off season, they chill. During his off season, he's grinding on his craft. So I think that, this song, these last couple songs really touch on the concept of what I think is the concept of this album. It's not about the money, it's more about time. Shit makes sense more when you see how I spend mine. So that just goes back to the same thing, but now Cole is saying, like, the reason he hasn't stopped is because he knows that it's not the money. Once he gets a certain amount of money is not when he's going to stop. It's about reaching the level he wants in the time that he has. He knows that he has a shelf life as a rapper. He knows how many more albums is he possibly going to put out, 3, 5. So he wants to reach the highest height he possibly can. And he knows all those critiques that we just talked about. He knows that people don't think he has his classic. He doesn't have his masterpiece. Even though, like, there are people who do think those are, but just, like, unanimous. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that respect. Like someone, like, the kind that someone like Kendrick commands. So he's basically saying, like, I'm going to use my time to the fullest extent. That's what's important right now. And even though I have $100 million, that's not what is valuable. The valuable thing is using these last couple albums that he has in him, that he even wants to do, and using those to his full extent, and making his mark. And one thing is that The Fall Off isn't his last album. He never said he was retiring, but that's in his mind, his final album that he has planned. And his goal that he talked about in his interview with Slam was that he would, let's say he did retire after The Fall Off, that he would be totally comfortable with that. There wouldn't be any discussion of whether Cole reached his personal highest potential. And I think that's really interesting because we should all strive to reach our highest potential, and especially the way the rap game is right now, we all know that that's not always every rapper's goal. So I should probably just let this song finish. Can't leave the game yet. I feel like LeBron. There it is again. I mean, LeBron is one of those people, right? He's one of those people with that Mamba mentality. So is J. Cole. There's people who are just going to grind no matter how much success they actually get. Pride is the devil. I mean, this sounds fire, so I'm excited for this. Just the name. Ooh, okay. What is this sample? Amine? I can't decide. Oh yeah. No, I love this beat. That's funny. I can't decide. Okay. Ooh. Okay. I'm going to make a prediction. So at this chorus is Pride is the devil. I think it got a hold on me. So I think in this song, Cole's going to talk about how his pride isn't that. Pride is the devil, not in the way most people think about it, but in the way that he is constantly trying to prove to himself that he's achieving his highest goal, his highest potential, right? And that he's constantly battling with himself not to be comfortable, to prove something not to other people, but his pride is more of an internal battle, not something like he has to show the whole world. But we'll see how it goes. Just throughout this whole album, Cole's control of where his flows go on the song, his just cohesiveness of his songs, the concepts, the way he uses auto-tune, the way he works in singing into his verses, it just feels like all those flaws that people have been pointing out rightfully about Cole's previous projects have kind of not only been addressed, but like he's meshing together all the best parts, he always had great choruses, but sometimes they just weren't executed well. On KOD, he embraced that trap sound, at least in my opinion, a little bit too much, where it didn't really feel like J. Cole to me. And, there's plenty of other criticisms, his subject matter, all of that. And I feel like a lot of that has really been addressed because every song has been on point. And not only that, but like, there isn't like some songs with auto-tune and some songs without, or some songs that sound like this and others. Like, everything sounds very cohesive. Like, every track has a little bit of everything, a little bit of all of his styles, but not only that, but like the best parts, and without all of those huge flaws that people love to point out about Cole. I mean, the one thing that never changes is his bars, right? This is Cole, his lyrics, his storytelling, but the delivery has been a huge pain point for people. And I feel like he's really addressing that. The off season, this is years of practice honing his craft. So this is 100% intentional, not in response to the haters, but just like the song is about his pride. This is for himself, like how he internalized those criticisms, those feelings, and worked on his craft. And it seems like he really did just kind of perfect his style in all those different areas where, he had room for improvement, and just kind of hone in on that and really pull together something that, is pretty amazing. But is this a Gunna feature? Is this a Gunna? No, this is a Lil Baby feature. My man, we got Lil Baby and J. Cole on a song together in 2021. This is pretty great, actually. Pretty fucking amazing. Lil Baby. Awesome. I'm hyped. Lil Baby's flow is fire. And he can be lyrical sometimes. Unexpected. This is almost as unexpected as J. Cole and 21 Savage's friendship. But yeah, this is great. I feel like the album cover really makes sense now. Right? The hoop's on fire. He kind of has it behind him in the rearview mirror, like he just tore that shit up. He's been practicing, he's been honing his craft, and now he's executing, and he's just kind of like, I told you, to all of his doubters, to all of his haters. He's kind of looking back. But the thing is, he's still humble about it. My man rides a bike. My man is humble. I mean, if you look at this cover, though, he's wearing some like a black hoodie. You can't even see like any logo. It looks like he's just wearing like some sports pants. You can't see anything. You can barely see his face. He's kind of just like, yeah, I just dropped this insanely fire album, and just kind of shrugging it off, right? He's kind of like, eh. But in the background you see that burning basketball court, and he's been at it. He's been going hard, and now he doesn't even need that anymore. Like it's all in the mind now. All of it. So in his interview, Cole explained that, the warm-up, or the come-up, the warm-up, Sideline Story, Friday Night Lights, all those mixtapes and the album, they have the basketball theme, but why the basketball theme, right? That's kind of something I never really thought about, but he kind of explains this in the documentary. So what he says is that that was actually inspired because he used to want to be in the NBA, right? And he would play basketball here and there, but he never really worked hard at it. And when he got into his 20s and he didn't make it in the NBA, he realized that it was because he really just didn't work hard enough. He didn't treat it like a job or as like a real sport. He kind of just treated it as a hobby, right? And this was also when he was starting to try to become a rapper. And he realized that if he just kept kind of like casually approaching rap, that it wasn't going to work out. And the exact same thing was going to happen. So he basically started treating rap like a sport, like a job, waking up every day, doing drills, making a schedule, having, a completely different mindset towards rap. And that's where the warm-up, the come-up, the Sideline Story, Friday Night Lights, the basketball theme is there because that's really the mindset that he applied to his music, which actually allowed him to have a career. Because if he didn't do that, he potentially, or at least in his mind, could have ended up just like his NBA career, which didn't work out then, but now he's going to play basketball in Rwanda. So I guess everything comes around full circle, just like Cole says. But, I thought that was really interesting because I love those mixtapes, but I never knew about that. Never even thought about it. I just thought it was like a cool aesthetic or a theme, or didn't think about it at all. But it's really interesting to think his creative artistic process is actually a huge part of why those mixtapes are themed in the basketball theme. So now I'm going to listen to Let Go My Hand. Let's see what this is about. Oh man. The sample, the jazzy sample, Cole just lightly singing over it. Oof, come on. Gonna close your eyes to this one. So this is a way more personal song because right off the start, I was not expecting him to just kind of start rapping almost like he's right up close to the mic with no effects, which hasn't really happened anywhere on this album, and I haven't heard that from Cole in a long time. So I was hearing the sample, I was like, he was kind of singing low slightly over the sample, this like beautiful jazzy sample. The beat was kind of low, and then I was kind of expecting it to be more of like a, just something more like melodic, and then he just comes up with this very direct kind of bars, more stream of consciousness. So he says, I'm on my way to London for a show for 7 digits, but I really wonder how I became my biggest critic. And he says, I wish that I could be my biggest fan, like back in the day when nobody knew my jams. I think that goes back to this pride thing that I was thinking he was going to kind of address on the Pride song, which he didn't, but now he's talking about it, right? Like, why is he his own biggest critic, and how come back in the day when he was kind of talking about how he got comfortable with his music, when he was in his early 20s just starting his career, and he made that decision not to be comfortable, but before that he said that he was kind of like, I have these songs and they're fire, so I'm not too worried about my career. Like, things are going good. I have some connections. He talked about this in the documentary and in the article. And so clearly back then he was like super hype on the songs. He talked about Lights Please, like that's just a banger, right? So back then he was super hype on his songs. He didn't need to push himself further, and he was happy with his own verses. But then he talks about a later stage in his career where he was like really criticizing himself, not allowing himself to relax, and that's kind of what led to the off season. So I think this is pretty interesting. Like, again, like all these songs are kind of working towards the concept of the off season more. And what I just heard was his son telling him like, Dad, let me go, so I don't know where that's going to go, but he's saying like, why am I my biggest critic when before I was my biggest fan? What's up with that? And maybe it has something to do with the pride that we just heard about. That pride is the devil, that pride where he wants to be acknowledged as, one of the greatest, or have that renowned classic album, or even that pride just to prove to himself that he reached the heights that he could and that he wants to. And this is kind of like how I said, it feels like he's just speaking to you in a stream of consciousness. Like, he's not overthinking the bars here, like not trying to do any clever wordplay or anything. He's literally just talking about his childhood, right? And he's talking about how he wants to raise his son, and how in his childhood he wasn't very confident. He wants his son to be confident. How in his childhood he was constantly scared of dying. He was just generally afraid of things because of the neighborhood that he was living in. And also touching on how he was always pretending to be, cool and confident, but he really wasn't inside. All right, so right here, J. Cole actually, he's talking about pretending to be tough until somebody like pulled his card and called his bluff, called him, basically called him out for pretending to be tough. And then he says that his last fight was actually with Puff Daddy. So I just looked this up, and I feel like this is one of those things like you've heard about, but like you don't really remember. So apparently Diddy was super pissed at Kendrick over the Control verse. He came up and tried to pour his drink on Kendrick, and according to this song, Cole tried to intervene, and they actually got in a fight. So I feel like we knew some of that, but it wasn't fully confirmed. So yeah, Cole fought Diddy. So that's and that was his last fight. And the funny thing is, Cole's talking about how he used to listen to Diddy and he bought his album in 7th grade and was like a fan of him. Ignorance is bliss, and innocence is just ignorance before it's introduced to currency and clips. That was a big one. Kind of got to think about that one. So innocent, he's saying that being innocent is just being ignorant of currency, so money. So you don't really know how the world works. You don't really understand the power that money holds in the world, and violence. You're ignorant to what violence is really about, to clips, to guns. But clips could also be talking about music, right? Music clip. So that also touches on Cole saying like how he used to be his biggest fan. Now he's not. Now he's not ignorant about the music industry. So he actually, he actually understands what the industry is and also understands the money side of the industry. So I don't think this is a reach here that he's talking about, how the money and violence and also the music industry is great until, it's glorified until you're actually there, until you have that 100 million and you realize, oh, well, that's not what I want, or that's not going to be enough for me because of my pride, which all stuff that he touched on in the previous songs. And, and then he says that same ignorance is going to give you 3 to 6 years in prison for hitting a lick. So also just going back to the criminal justice system and, how pretty much the glorification of violence just has really one end where you're either, dead, like he was talking about, where he was afraid of dying as a child in his neighborhood, or you're ending up doing 3 to 6, in prison, or if you, are one of those rare cases and you make it and you become a rapper like Cole, you find out that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. So, yeah, pretty, the song's called Let Go My Hand, so I think this is really just a very honest, a brutally honest look at kind of the more depressing aspects of what it's like to be him. All right, so still on the same song, we just heard this, Cole starts singing, and again, the singing is so much better. I mean, like, it's layered, it's more like quiet, and, just kind of flows better. It's not like raspy and more and grating like his singing, was on previous albums. So he's kind of singing about, it was kind of hard to hear everything he said, but it just kind of had this nostalgic kind of like everything's going to be okay, but also kind of sad feel to it. And then in the outro, I'm pretty sure this is Diddy talking. And it just kind of sounds like, on Life After Death where Biggie's like, about to kill himself and Diddy's like kind of like screaming and talking, but like, I don't know, it just reminded me of him. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is actually Diddy speaking over the ending, which is pretty ironic considering Cole just talked about how he got in a fight with him and that was his last fight. So I'm just going to finish this out, see if Diddy says anything interesting. So next up we have Interlude, which we've already heard. But I really am excited to hear it in the context of everything in this album. That drop is so nice. The sample. I love how Cole, so the beat is kind of like this soul sample with like a muted track of Cole singing. Like you can hear it, but it's very like, you can't hear the words. It almost sounds like he's mumbling in the background, but I think it's just his vocals from the chorus of this track like lowered really low. So you hear him kind of mumbling in the background, and then you hear him actually speaking over the beat where he's also kind of singing in the background. So it just creates this, and this is just another example. Like he did this on all his other tapes, right? He did that, on all his intros. He's like talking like, this is your moment. You've been waiting for this for your whole life. Here's your moment. I can smell it. I can feel it. But now he's got this crazy soul sample going in the background, plus the chorus of the song going on in the background too, all at the same time, just creating this kind of like harmony that just makes it so much smoother and kind of brings it into the modern age, because that kind of stuff has been overdone so much. So just another example of his evolution, not just as a rapper, but as a producer, as somebody who just makes music, as an artist. So now, it can go up, it can go down. Either way, I'm prepared, right? To me right now, like from what I've heard so far, from the interviews, from the documentary, what that means is whether he becomes the most respected hip-hop artist of all time after this album and the next two, It's a Boy and the Fall Off, or people hate on him and he's trashed, he knows he did everything in his power. I think that's really what that means, because it can go up, it can go down. The basketball hoop's burning in the background. I did everything I could on that court. I trained, I practiced as much as possible. The ball's out of his court now, right? Like he did everything he possibly could to be the best rapper. He put in all those hours. So if it doesn't resonate with the people, then it doesn't resonate with the people, and that's the fall off. Then he falls off. But on the other hand, if he's going to be remembered as the best rapper of all time, that's a whole other thing, And I think he recognizes that he doesn't have control over that, and maybe that's something that he's realized in the last couple of years, that's kind of out of his control. But the one thing he does have control over is being his best self, pushing him to his absolute limit. And so that's kind of what the vibes I'm getting from this interlude now that I've heard everything and kind of really dove into what's going on with this album, is that it can go up, it can go down, but I've done my part. So it's really in our hands, the listeners' hands. Like, is this gonna touch our souls like Friday Night Lights did? Is this gonna resonate on a deeper level with us, or is it just gonna kind of, fall off to the side and he falls off? So I think Cole is just taking a very realistic perspective to the rest of his career. Like, he knows what's up. He knows his shelf life, that, how much longer is he going to be sitting on the throne of hip hop? And so I think he's really just trying to put himself in a position where whatever happens, he knows that he did everything he possibly could. Yeah, so one other thing he says in this song is, the shots are popping, the bodies are piling up, you can smell it in the street, but you can't turn the other cheek, because this is literally everywhere right now. I mean, just we're constantly being bombarded by the next tragedy, the next horrible thing that's going on in the world. And with social media, we literally can't turn the other cheek. Like, saying that we're not aware of it, or whatever excuse we might make, it doesn't even make sense anymore. Like, we all know what's going on. We all know what happened in 2020 with Black Lives Matter, and we all know what's been going on in this country for hundreds of years, but now more than ever, it's in our face. There's no escaping it. I think a lot of people before social media and even before 2020 could live in their own world where race issues didn't affect them, and they didn't even need to be conscious of the struggles that different races go through. They didn't even need to know about it. They never had to put themselves in the shoes of a black person. They never had to think about what it might be like to be afraid to call the police. That thought never crossed their minds, right? But now, it wasn't an excuse back then, and it definitely is impossible now to act like you don't know these things are going on. And obviously in the US, but just all around the world, and even to the point where it's almost like a joke now that people are just like woke on social media but don't do anything in their personal lives. But that is a huge difference from how it was before, when you could just live in your own bubble, your own community, and never know what's going on in the community of someone who's growing up somewhere like where Cole grew up, where he was worried about dying as a kid and surrounded by violence, or Kendrick, where he was surrounded by gang violence. All these things that we could have easily just kind of ignored in the past. Now that's not an option anymore. Right, so at the end right there, I done seen the highest heights, I done seen the lowest lows. So that's just going back to, like, it feels like to me, even like I said with the album cover where everything's kind of behind him, he's kind of like, he's confident that he gave it his all, and he's kind of like, I've been at the top, I've been at the bottom, so now it's on you, like, it's the burden is off him. He did everything in his power. All right, so now I'm going to listen to the Climb Back. Of course, already heard this, but who knows, there might be a feature, or I think it's obviously going to hit different. The interlude song was completely different to me, hearing it now with the rest of the album. So, are you doing it to facilitate growth or become famous? Which is more important, getting or letting go? So here, on that notepad where it said Revenge of the Dreamers, the off season, It's a Boy, and the Fall Off, kind of like his release schedule. At the top, it said the Fall Off era, right? So he's setting himself up for like letting go of this thing, letting go of this huge part of his life, letting go of his career almost. And I feel like kind of how he said it can go up and go down. He's basically just letting go and saying, it's on you guys now. Like, I've done my part. I've done my preparation in the off season. I gave it my all. I set that court on fire. I've been practicing, working on my craft. And now he's kind of handing it off, right? And he's saying, like, I have to let go. I can't control the narrative. I can just control myself being as potent with my pen as I possibly can, writing the best possible raps, making those amazing songs. And it can go up, it can go down, but he's just letting go and saying, you know, this is the end phase of my career. This is the fall off era. And whether it goes up or down, that's really, you know, it depends on him first, but he's done the legwork. So now it's more up to us. It's up to the listeners. It's up to how we connect with the music. So he's almost, you know, his pride has to let go of his need to control what people are, or to control or to shape the narrative to fit into a mold. So I think this is really just fits with the kind of the theme of the album really well, and the overall theme of this fall off era that we're experiencing. Yeah, I mean, this is just another example of how, I mean, this song is just straight bars. You know, he talks a little bit about death and just kind of more on the theme of like all these people around him dying. But there's a lot of great bars, little one-liners here and there. And I feel like the album version might have a little more layering where you hear like him singing in the background, him doing little vocal effects. Not 100% sure, but it does feel like there's a little more happening here. And it adds to the track. And it's just another example of just like the overall mastery that Cole exhibits. And yeah, I mean, this is, I definitely get why he released it as a single. This is almost a near flawless song. So yeah, this is, it's just great. I mean, it came out a while ago, so it's been a good minute since I've heard it. And, you know, I love the kind of twinkling beat, and I think he just absolutely destroys it. But there is one really interesting idea here that he talks about, is that, you know, we have a number for a suicide prevention hotline. But where's the number where people can call when they are about to get into a violent conflict that involves a gun that's going to end in a homicide? And I think that's a really interesting idea because, you know, in that situation, potentially multiple people are at risk of dying. To have some kind of a crisis prevention is kind of like what we've seen with this abolish police movement. There is this broader idea of like, why are the only people we have to respond to these mental health crises police officers? Like, why is there no other party that we can involve that could, you know, that people could consult with, maybe without fear of being arrested and put into prison, that could solve problems, you know, whose job it isn't to arrest as many people as possible. You know, if someone was having a mental health crisis, or if this kind of situation was developing, what if we had some kind of independent body that could come out and try to resolve the situation? People whose purpose was to resolve conflict, not to arrest somebody or imprison somebody, to prevent conflict. I think that's what J. Cole is kind of drawing attention to. Like, there's nobody to even call in those situations. Like, if you were about to get into a violent altercation with somebody and you wanted to call it off, or you wanted to have a way to diffuse the situation, you could not call the cops then, because you would probably be put in prison, or the other person would be put in prison. So, you know, I think he's drawing attention to the fact that even a hotline would help, someone to talk to, someone to maybe give you some guidance on what to do in that situation. Obviously, not always, this will not apply to all situations, but, you know, Cole is just observing that that kind of resource is not there, and it's something that we could implement. And if there were some kind of officers whose goal was just to resolve conflicts and not arrest people, then they could be relied on more by the community to resolve a conflict without fear of retaliation or without fear of people being imprisoned. All right, so now we're going to listen to Close. This is the second to last track on the album. So this has a real bouncy beat, and right off the bat he says, you know, there's temptations to coast, but I don't, because I'm not trying to be another almost. So there it is again, that same kind of idea of not, that fear of not living up to his potential. And, you know, as much as he says, you know, it could go up, it could go down, whatever, you know, there's also that song and those couple references to his own personal pride that keeps him in the race, that voice that's constantly criticizing him, you know, whether that's anxiety or self-doubt that he's dealing with. You know, he doesn't specifically say, but you know it's there, that he feels like he almost lost his edge, and he sometimes feels uninspired, and he sometimes feels like the music he makes isn't good enough, and that's what keeps him pushing, and keeps pushing him. So now he's close to the end. He's close to the fall off. This is the fall off era, right? So let's see where the song goes. So here it is again. Cole is again comparing himself to his peers, and now he's talking about someone he knew back in the day. Maybe they ran together as a friend group when he was in New York in college, and he's basically saying yeah, I'm close to being the greatest of all time, or being a great in the rap game, and this guy is constantly close to making drug deals, and he's playing games with law enforcement. He's playing games with his life. And kind of comparing himself to this other person. So yeah, I mean, still got to finish the song, but it just kind of feels like he's doing that again, where he kind of goes back and says, here's what I'm doing, and kind of saying what you're doing, I don't know, should you be doing that? Or maybe even just a thought experiment of where his life could possibly have ended up had he not put in that insane amount of work to get where he is, where now he's close to being the greatest, whereas he could have been close to, being dead or being in prison for selling drugs. So when he was friends with this person, he's saying back then he was broke, but he was close to kind of making it as a rapper, whereas this person was a drug dealer, but he's close to being addicted to the various substances that he sells. He's close to getting in trouble with the law. He's close to dying. So kind of just comparing the two different paths that they both took, but also talking about where they are now. And that now Cole is close to greatness or has already achieved it, and this other person, he hasn't really said much about it, but most likely hasn't. And he's saying we haven't talked in a while, so he's kind of catching up with this person and seeing how their two different paths, their two different approaches to life have panned out. And then the song goes on with Cole saying that this guy had money while Cole didn't at the time, and eventually he was flashing it so much that he ended up getting killed. And Cole, had some kind of a nightmare about it, and then it happened. And he was always kind of close to that, whereas Cole was close to being broke, but he was also close to greatness. And this guy was, kind of making it as a drug dealer, but also always close to falling victim to the game, which he eventually did. So this makes sense to me in the off season, because this is all about planning. Cole is really, that notebook. He's planning out his next 3 albums, and the off season has been planned for a long time. It's a masterclass in preparation, like Cole said. So to me, this song fits in really well because it's just showing how he always had a plan, right? When Cole was broke and he was writing in his notebook, he had that vision. He always had a plan. Maybe he didn't know the true nature of the rap game, but he had that vision and he followed it as best as he possibly could. And now that he knows what's up in the rap game, he's now kind of updating his plan, saying, okay, I'm not going to be a rapper forever, most likely. I need to figure out how I want to go out. And so this is what we're experiencing right now. And Cole is also at the same time saying most rappers don't think about this, and they don't even care to plan their own current music. They're not going to plan 3 albums ahead and think about the consequences of all their actions and how hard they're going to grind now and how it's going to pay off in an album called The Off Season 3 years later. So he's really thinking ahead. He's planning, and this song is just showcasing how important that is, because he was always planning while other people were living for the moment, living for that instant gratification of wealth and flashing expensive things, and having that kind of luxury lifestyle instantly through a way that according to Cole is not maybe the most sustainable and will end badly, just like his friends. So he's really tracing these 2 paths of life and taking a look back and being like, damn, I made the right decision. And I think the purpose of it isn't to just beat his chest and say hell yeah, I did the right thing, but also to tell other people, like he used to do on his mixtapes, take a look at how you're setting up your life right now, because you're going to be in the off season at some point in your own life. You're going to be in the fall off in your own life. And where do you want to be during that time? You have to set that up right now. And if you're living for the now, you might not be thinking as much about the future, and you might end up like his friend who ended up, dying. Yeah, I think this is something I got to listen to 5 more times, and definitely an interesting concept, especially with the narrative of the album. So yeah, this was really cool. All right, so now we're gonna listen to the last song. It's called "Hunger on Hillside." I know this is gonna be an incredible song. Like, I don't know, "Hunger on Hillside." Something about that just that has a ring to it, you know. And it's the last track. This album, so far, wow. I mean, it's been really impressive. So I think that this is gonna be a great closer, not just in the song itself, but also to close the story and hopefully give us some hints of what's coming next, because clearly Cole has a plan for us and for his music. So I hope that we get a little bit of, like some path to what's next. The money might fade, but respect won't. Still gonna be me when success gone. So here it is again. He's just thinking 5 steps ahead, planning out his life. You know, he knows, like, I'm not going to be a rapper forever, and if I am, I'm going to do it in my own way. So what's my life going to look like outside of rap? Like, what is next? And he's setting himself up so he can look back and not feel like he sold out, so he can look back and feel like he gave it his all, so he can look back and be satisfied with what he did. And so he's not looking back like he was looking back on his basketball days thinking like, oh shit, if I just hit the gym every morning for an hour or two, I could have made it in the NBA. So now he's thinking on a higher level, thinking like, I'm in the NBA, or I'm making music. I am one of the top artists in the world. What's my legacy now? Am I going to look back, later on and regret my legacy? Because that's where he's worried, because he's seen all these other rappers, kind of fall from grace. So yeah, the song's definitely kind of right on theme with that. Like, his singing now, it has that emotional rawness to it, which he just didn't have before. Like, he's actually going for it. He's hitting those notes. Like, and again, like, of course, it's J. Cole. Like, it's not sounding amazing, but it's the emotion that hits you and moves you. It's like when Kid Cudi's singing. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about the just the pure emotion behind it, and he's actually allowing that to come out. I feel like even on Forest Hills Drive, where he was singing like, I keep my faith strong, like, he was holding it in. He was kind of like, now he's just like going pedal to the metal, letting his voice just fill the room while he's recording, and just kind of giving it his soul. And like, that's just it's just powerful. Even if he's not the best singer, it makes a statement. Whereas before, it was kind of like he was just singing, just kind of like, knew he wasn't that great, so he was kind of toning it down. This is a complete 180 from that, where he's just like, fuck it. I'm J. Cole. I'm going to sing my heart out right here and just, give it all my emotion that I have trapped in here, thinking about my future, my career, my legacy. All right, so there it is. The ultimate price is regret now. And he says before, time is more important than money. So now the only thing he has to lose, right? He's seen the highest highs, he's seen the lowest lows. The only thing he has to lose is, at the end of the day, regretting something that he did now. So that kind of, it ties in everything we talked about with this album all together. Everything that came in the documentary, everything I read in the article, like, regret, right? That's his biggest fear, right? And even time, like, you have the 24 hours in a day to do whatever you want. You won't get that time back. But regret, that's like, later. That's in a later phase. So you might have time when you're regretting something, but it's more about the moment, right? You can't go back and have that time in that moment. You still have time if you're regretting something 20 years later, but regret is the last thing he has left. He has the money, he has the time to do whatever he wants, but the regret is something that he will never be able to live with if he doesn't reach his potential. And just judging by the way his mind works, he will regret certain things, and we all do. I think when we all look back on our past, there are certain things that we regret because the grass is always greener. Love yours. That's his song, right? So I think he also understands that, but he's trying to minimize the regret. He's trying to give it his all. That way, if he has regrets, it's not because he didn't try enough. It's because of some other factor, some external factor, or something that he couldn't have changed anyway, so he doesn't have to dwell on it. But I think J. Cole knows that if he does have regrets because he didn't try enough, that's going to eat away at his soul. So he said, mainly concerned back in the day with how long I would last. So throwback right there to, the math class song, Wet Dreams. And, that's one of those songs that Cole constantly gets made fun of. If you say you're a fan of J. Cole, people are like, oh, I got a boner in my math class guy. So I think that might be touching on like a potential regret. He's like, why did I make that song? Was that weird? I mean, personally, like, I thought that was cool. Like, it was a very, down to earth kind of song, a very honest song that you never hear. You don't hear people talking about that. But also, like, there's a reason people don't talk about their math class boners. So it's just kind of like, the grass is always greener, right? He could have not made that song, but then he could have not resonated with millions of people around the world. And that was a hit song, right? And that was a lot of people's introduction to J. Cole. So I think this is like a perfect example of that. And one other thing that stands out in the song is his flow. Like his like the way he's spitting, it's evolved. It's kind of advanced. You can tell it has moved with the times. Like he has kind of like that Playboi Carti sound where he's like spitting the words out of his mouth. Kind of as he says them, and on other times he kind of sounds like Future. He sounds like Young Thug. He's rapping fast. He's hitting those like Migos triplets, like like this is all stuff that he never did before. So another just amazing example of his evolution. All right, so after spending 2 hours reacting to the album and trying to think, what are my final thoughts on this, I decided to just wait until the morning to really be able to hear it again, hear it more in a casual way, and gather some first thoughts. So, just right off the bat, like, was this Cole's best album? Was this his defining album? And just my response to that is like, what does that even mean at this point? Like, this is his best work for himself personally, which was the entire point of the offseason, right? So he achieved that. As a Cole fan, I could not be happier. I mean, this is exactly what I wanted. I think he's absolutely evolved all his skills to their fullest potential. Not saying that he can't do better, but like, this is kind of how I touched on, this is everything we could have hoped for. This is an evolution in every single way, combining all his best traits while kind of reducing some of those less, some of those more negative tendencies that he had. So honestly, is this going to hold as special of a place in my heart as maybe Friday Night Lights or Born Sinner? I don't know yet, but that's really subjective, right? But just objectively, like, Cole is at his best right here. And I think that's really all that matters for me. So, with that in mind, I would say this is his best album, honestly. I don't know if I'm going to love it the most. To Pimp a Butterfly is Kendrick's best album. It's not my favorite. So I think only time will tell right now, and it could go up, it could go down, but we're in the fall off era, and that's really exciting to me because I know Cole's hungry. He's going to prove himself, prove his legacy, and if this isn't that defining album, then maybe he still has that up his sleeve, and I am ready for it. So that's kind of my initial thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. And I would really appreciate if you like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Let me know what your favorite song is. Let me know, how you feel about this album as a whole. And if you're a real Cole fan, you're about to see a video pop up that I did about his song Brackets, where I actually took a look at wealth inequality through the lyrics of Brackets. This is a super underrated song off KOD. Not many people know about it. Nobody talks about it. So highly recommend checking that out if you are a Cole fan and want to learn more about wealth inequality and how J. Cole has kind of touched on that in his music. So thank you again, and see you next time.